Did Chrisley Knows Best star Savannah Chrisley give up on prison reform when parents were released? Hello everyone. Welcome back for another video. I hope everyone's having a great day. Before watching the video, please subscribe and like it. For more than a year, Savannah Chrisley positioned herself as an outspoken advocate for prison reform, using her platform, media appearances, and personal connections to highlight what she described as deeply broken systems within America's federal prison network. Her advocacy was personal. Her parents, Chrisley Knows Best stars, Todd and Julie Chrisley, had been convicted on federal fraud and tax evasion charges and sentenced to lengthy prison terms. While many celebrity campaigns on justice reform fizzle out after a few tweets, Savannah went all in, visiting prisons, meeting with lawmakers, speaking on podcasts, and launching emotional social media appeals. But in the months since her parents' early release in 2025, observers have begun asking an uncomfortable question: has Savannah Chrisley's passion for reform cooled now that her own family is out of the system? The speculation stems from a noticeable shift in her public focus. Once dominated by prison reform hashtags, advocacy event photos, and policy commentary, her social feeds have reverted to lifestyle content, promotional posts for her podcast Unlocked, and family updates, while her core fans defend her, saying she's earned a break after an emotionally grueling ordeal. Critics argue that her sudden silence on the cause she once championed raises questions about the depth and sincerity of her reform mission. The rise of Savannah's prison reform advocacy. When Todd and Julie Chrisley were sentenced in November 2022, Todd to 12 years and Julie to 7, the verdict sent shockwaves through the reality TV world. The Chrisleys, known for their polished Southern family image, found themselves at the center of a very different public narrative. Savannah, then in her abruptly stepped into the role of head of household for her younger brother Grayson and niece Chloe. It was a seismic life shift, but rather than simply retreating from public life, she began using her platform to shine a light on what she called the inhumane and outdated realities of America's federal prisons. She recounted her first visits to her parents' facilities, describing poor food quality, inadequate health care, and extreme heat during summer months. "This isn't about my parents," she often said in interviews. "This is about a system that treats human beings like they're disposable." In 2023 and 2024, Savannah made multiple trips to Washington, D.C., where she reportedly met with advocacy groups and congressional staffers. She gave emotional testimony on podcasts about hearing her mother describe moldy living conditions, limited access to clean water, and even snakes in prison laundry rooms. At the height of her activism, Savannah was speaking almost weekly about prison reform. She partnered with nonprofit groups, appeared on news segments, and used Unlocked as a platform to interview former inmates, prison advocates, and families of those incarcerated. Her storytelling ability, mixed with personal stakes, gave her a unique credibility that caught national media attention. The turning point: early releases in January 2025. After multiple appeals and sentence reductions related to changes in federal guidelines, Todd and Julie Chrisley were released years earlier than expected. The family quickly reunited in Nashville, their emotional reunion making tabloid headlines and sparking speculation about potential TV projects documenting their post-prison lives. Savannah posted videos of her parents' homecoming, writing about God's grace and how grateful she was to have them back. In the weeks that followed, her Instagram feed shifted from advocacy-heavy posts to family celebrations, promotional content, and lighthearted podcast snippets. While no one expected her to continue the exact same level of intensity after all, the personal crisis that fueled her activism had shifted. Some observers noted the near-complete absence of prison reform talk. Even more telling, Savannah had been scheduled to speak at a March 2025 virtual event for a major prison advocacy group. Her name quietly disappeared from the speaker list weeks before the event, with no public explanation. For critics, it was the first tangible sign that she might be moving away from the cause. Why? The silence feels loud. Prison reform advocates, especially those who collaborated with Savannah during her parents' incarceration, say they've noticed her absence. One organizer, speaking anonymously to avoid personal fallout, told us, "When Savannah was in the trenches with us, she was a powerhouse. She got media coverage we couldn't dream of. But lately, we can't even get her to return calls about ongoing campaigns. It's disappointing because she has this rare ability to connect with an audience that doesn't normally pay attention to prison reform." Critics argue that the sudden silence sends a damaging message. that prison reform is only worth fighting for if someone you love is affected. They point to a pattern they've seen before: celebrities passionately taking up a cause while it's personally relevant, then quietly stepping away when their immediate crisis ends. For Savannah, the optics are complicated by the fact that her parents' early releases were aided by changes in sentencing guidelines and what her family has described as answered prayers, rather than a sweeping victory for the broader prison population. Many of the people Savannah once advocated for remain behind bars under the same conditions she once described as unbearable. Supporters push back. Savannah's defenders argue that the criticism is unfair and ignores the emotional and physical toll of her 2-year ordeal. She carried her whole family on her back while also becoming a national voice for prison reform, one longtime fan wrote on social media. She's allowed to step back and focus on healing. That doesn't mean she's given up. Others note that she may simply be shifting her advocacy to behind-the-scenes work. Savannah herself hinted at this in a recent podcast episode, saying, "Not everything I do for prison reform needs to be posted on Instagram." It's possible she's working on longer-term projects, such as documentary development or lobbying efforts that require privacy until they're ready to launch. Still, the optics of her public pivot are hard to ignore. Fans who followed her because of her advocacy have expressed disappointment in the change of focus, even if they still support her personally. The pressure of public expectations. Part of the issue may be the unrealistic expectations placed on celebrity activists. When someone becomes the face of a cause, the public often assumes they have an obligation to keep fighting indefinitely, regardless of personal circumstances. For Savannah, whose fame was rooted in lighthearted reality TV before becoming entwined with justice reform, the transition from family comedy star to policy advocate was already an unusual leap. Maintaining that momentum while managing family responsibilities, rebuilding a career, and navigating the aftermath of her parents' legal battle was never going to be easy. The criticism she faces now may be more about how society projects responsibility onto public figures than about her actual level of commitment. The bigger picture: the question of whether Savannah Chrisley has given up on prison reform may not have a clear answer. What's undeniable is that her personal story drew public attention to conditions that often go unseen. Whether or not she continues to be publicly active, her earlier advocacy has already left a mark, one that could inspire others to carry the torch. At the same time, her apparent retreat from public advocacy underscores a sobering truth about cause-driven celebrity activism. When it's rooted primarily in personal experience, it can fade once the personal connection changes. For systemic issues like prison reform, this can lead to cycles of heightened awareness followed by quiet periods where the public's attention drifts away. Where Savannah goes from here: Savannah's future relationship with prison reform could take several paths. She could return to public advocacy once her family's life has stabilized. She might incorporate reform themes into future media projects, blending her entertainment background with her activist experience, or she might quietly continue supporting the cause through private donations, consulting, and networking without the glare of public scrutiny. For now, she's leaning into family, career, and rebuilding normalcy after 2 years of chaos. Whether that's a temporary break or a permanent shift remains to be seen. If Savannah Chrisley's advocacy chapter is over, it will leave behind a complicated legacy: a young woman thrust into activism by personal tragedy, who used her fame to amplify stories from inside the prison system, then stepped back once her own family was free. To some, that's understandable self-preservation. To others, it's an abandonment of a fight that still needs voices like hers. In the end, the question isn't just about Savannah Chrisley, it's about how we, as a society, define commitment to a cause. Does it require a lifetime of public dedication, or is it enough to fight fiercely when you can, then hand the baton to others? Savannah once said, "Prison reform isn't a moment, it's a movement." Whether she still believes that will be revealed, not in her captions or hashtags, but in the quiet choices she makes from here on out. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, America Trends 24, and stay with us.